Good morning to everyone. It's time to get going with our Live Away program to Cyprus, where we're heading in March of 2022. I'm particularly excited about this program. If I'm perfectly honest with everybody, this is actually the first destination that I had in mind when I developed this idea together with my colleagues about liveaways. I actually have a good friend here in Thailand who spends part of her year in Cyprus, and I went to school with a number of Cypriots. And so I heard so much about the country, and in developing my own knowledge of it, I decided this would be a perfect place to spend a little bit of time next winter when we're ripe to do something new after spending so much time stuck at home. So for those of you who are new to us, I'm going to just give you a brief insight as to what we're all about here at Wheel and Anchor. And so our regulars, just bear with me for a minute or two. The mission that we created when we started this community was all about bringing travelers together. And so I've been traveling with Canadians from all across the country for the better part of 30 years, if you can imagine, to places all over the country. And the thing that I found most rewarding about trips is that when you have people who have the same appreciation for learning about new cultures and spending time and tasting and just that whole exploration feeling that we get when we do that together, we have a lot of fun. And so that's what our community at Wheel and Anchor is all about, is bringing travelers like you guys all together. And specifically, my life mission, if you will, is that each and every one of you, that all of us become well-traveled and well-connected, because those of us who have the benefit and have been fortunate enough to travel around the world, you just become more worldly, and by worldly, I mean you have a better understanding of humanity at large, different cultures, different perspectives on life, on politics, on religion, on everything else. And in doing that, you invariably also become connected to your fellow travelers, as well as the people that you meet along the way. And that's what I think those are some of the side benefits of travel, right? It's not just about checking off countries on the list. Although, let's face it, we all like to do this, myself as well. It's like a bit of a life mission for a traveler, but it's the benefits of all those things that you experience along the way. Joining us on our webinar this morning, as per usual, so my name is Gordon. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. Today, as usual, my right-hand man and our co-founder is Joel, and who is providing our technical support, and Paula, who many of you who will have spoken to on the phone. She is our senior trip specialist and kind of busy these days. So, so if you tried to call our office, or if you sent an email in and you haven't got an answer back right away, just bear with us. Things have gotten a little bit busy over here at Wheel and Anchor in the last couple of weeks since we launched these programs. And so we will get back to you. So let's talk a little bit about the plan today. As usual, you are all interested in doing something different next winter. That's the motto for our liveaways, let's get out there, let's explore the world a little bit. And I am going to take you on this tour of Cyprus, this wonderful little island country in the Eastern Mediterranean, where we're going to be going in March of 2022. Let me tell you a little bit about the concept behind the liveaways. And so there's a couple of key points here. First of all, it's an opportunity to do something a bit different, to spend time in a place that you may not have thought of traveling before. And in doing so, not only do we get away from a little bit of that harsh Canadian winter, but we get a chance to bring our community to a new community. So, in the case of the first two programs that we have already introduced, we already have great response. And I'm excited to travel with a larger group of people and have a chance to introduce you to some of the people in these wonderful, wonderful countries. We have also designed these programs with more free time and less structure. So the idea is that we want to give you the opportunity of lots of things to do, but at the same time, it's not prescriptive. It's not like, here are all the tours. You have to go on all of them because you've paid for them. But we developed this notion of an activity credit. So we're going to give you a whole bunch of options, and we're going to basically say, here is $1,000 is sort of the basic sum. And with that, you can choose to go on the programs and do the activities that you want to do without having to feel like you paid for something that you just don't want to go on because, let's face it, most of us don't want to go on a trip every single day. And for those that do, there's certainly lots of opportunity to do that. So those are the hallmarks of our LIVEAWAY programs. And let's get into Cyprus itself, and I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what to expect. Cyprus is an amazing country, and as a travel destination, as Canadians, we generally don't know a lot about it. But let's look first of all at the map. By now, you've probably either read our brochure or you've Googled it, so you've figured out where it is. It's way over there in the very eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, just to the south of Turkey, and not far from the border to Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. So, let's face it, it's a very how should we say, it's a very busy part of the world with all the stuff going on there. And Cyprus has no shortage of history. But first of all, climate-wise, being where it is, it has a Mediterranean climate, which means the summers are very hot, but the winters are generally very mild. And in March, the temperature ranges usually anywhere between the low teens and the high teens and low 20s. So it's a nice, comfortable temperature, great for touring. You can still go swimming. The sea is a little bit cool at this time of the year, typically in sort of around 17, 18 degrees Celsius. So maybe not for everybody. It certainly looks inviting as it does in the summertime. The other thing that's convenient about Cyprus is that we have the opportunity to use it as a jumping off point for our weekends, where we offer the chance to go to Beirut in Lebanon and Tel Aviv in Israel, or Cairo in Egypt. And I'll talk a little bit about those in a few minutes. Cyprus itself is, as I say, it's quite a country. It has a checkered history. It was first occupied by the Byzantines way back, more than 1,000 years ago, than the British, and they sold it to the French, and then the Italians were there, and the Ottomans. The Germans had it for a while. Seems like all of Europe at one point or another occupied Cyprus. Then, of course, fast forwarding to the 1960s, and many of you will remember the evolution of Cyprus at the time that that independence was declared, and by the Greek part of Cyprus in the south. Of course, the Turkish didn't like that idea, and they rebelled a bit, and the country became split into two. The southern part, which is roughly 2/3 of Cyprus, which is Greek influenced, and the northern part in Turkey, which is a state that is actually not even recognized by most countries around the world. So it has, and that's part of the allure of Cyprus is that for many, many years, as you well know, Canadian peacekeepers spent almost 30 years in the UN buffer zone along that line between southern and northern Cyprus, and keeping the peace. And thankfully, for the last 20 years, it's been actually very peaceful there in Cyprus. Occasional tensions, as two countries often have, but the border is during most times open, and you can go back and forth at certain points without even getting a stamp in your passport. And it's fascinating to see how these respective countries or these respective parts of the island have evolved over the years. We'll talk a little bit about, of course, Nicosia, the capital, as well as FAMAGUSTA, a country that was seized during the Turkish invasion back in the early 70s and is largely a ghost town. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. Size-wise, Cyprus is big, but not that big. So we're going to be staying down in Paphos in the southwest part of the country, and you can drive all the way out to Ayia Napa, which is famous for its beaches, particularly in the summertime. The Europeans flock to Ayia Napa and Protaras and the very east side of the island. That's about a 2-hour trip to give you a sense of how big the country is. And the Troodos Mountains you see on the map in front of you, Mount Olympus, rise to about 2,000 meters above sea level. They even have a ski resort up there. So you can actually, in the wintertime in March when we're there, I didn't put it as a side trip because I kind of figured that there might not be so interested in skiing. But if anybody feels like saying to all their friends and relatives back home that they went skiing, we can make that happen. So why are we going to Cyprus? Well, I mentioned already a little bit about the climate. I think it's not too warm, certainly not at this time of the year, but it's certainly a lot warmer than what we'll find in most parts of Canada. March is spring already. So the sun is shining, there's still a little bit of rain, and it's before the sort of the tourist masses arrive later in the early summer. And for me, one of the biggest reasons that is a draw to Cyprus is, as with our other destinations and many places, is simply the picturesque scenery. In this case, the swimming pool blue water, as I characterized it in the brochure. It'll blow your mind how clear, how blue this water is. And I always remember some of the first times that I went to Turkey and other parts of the Eastern Mediterranean, because I always associated it with what you see in France and Spain. And the water isn't so blue, but here it looks like you're somewhere in the Caribbean. And the other thing that's great about Cyprus is that they have a terrific cuisine there that has many different regional influences, and it's very, very reasonably priced. I am a bit of a wine lover myself, as many of you will know, and you can pick up a delicious bottle of wine, even in a restaurant, for like $10, $15, $20 a bottle, prices that we certainly haven't heard of back home for a couple of decades. I'll start off by talking about a few of the things that we might do while we are in Cyprus. So some of the excursions that we have. And there'll be a whole bunch of things that we do in addition to sort of the regularly scheduled tours that we offer, because my view is that it's not just all about, hopping into a minivan and driving around the country, but it's about listening, hearing from locals talk about the history, the cultural, the political climate, all those different things. And we'll have time for all those activities in addition to some of these things. As I mentioned, we're staying in Paphos, which is a very old town in the western part of the country. And of course, as with any of our trips, one of the first things that we'll do is take an orientation tour on foot. We'll spend a lot of time probably during the month. You'll each get, those who come along will get a transit pass that enables you to the use of the bus system for the whole 30 days. And from where we're staying to the center of the old town is about 20 minutes or so by bus. So it's quite accessible. And our orientation tour will take us around some of the key places. Now, the old town of Paphos has some amazing archaeological sites like the Tomb of the King, and a terrific medieval castle, and a whole bunch of markets. So sorry, gentlemen, for the ladies that enjoy shopping for some neat trinkets and crafts and all the rest of it. There's some great markets to be enjoyed there. And a farmer's market that happens twice a week as well. So we'll see all those things when we first arrive on our Old Town tour on foot, and that'll enable you to sort of get your bearings when you go and walk around and enjoy the city on your own. Among the other trips that we'll do, for example, is to Limassol and Kourion. So Limassol is one of the biggest cities in Cyprus on the south coast of the country. And it has developed quite a bit. You get a sense of it from the picture here. The waterfront is all full of high-rise buildings, but the nice part of it is that as with many of these cities, its old town has a particular charm to it. In particular, the Limassol Castle that we'll visit here is one of the historical treasures of the country. And on the way to Limassol, about 20 minutes outside of the main city, is Kourion. And Kourion is one of Cyprus's really most important archaeological sites. It's an ancient city-state, and there are ruins that will remind you of places like Ephesus in Turkey, or the Greek ruins, the Acropolis in Athens, some truly specific. So for history buffs, this is one of the highlights of all of Cyprus. And interestingly, Kourion is located inside what they call an SBA, a sovereign base area. So the British maintain two bases, if you will. This is kind of the one of NATO's westernmost outposts in the western part of the Mediterranean, in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. And so this also gives you a little bit of a color of what's happening on the geopolitical stage by being inside Kourion and this so-called SBA. From Paphos, again, when you go immediately north, and it's not all that far of a drive up, already about 40 minutes north of the city, we head up into the Troodos Mountains. And as I said in the introduction, the Troodos Mountains go up to about 2,000, about 6,000 feet above sea level. And the scenery changes very differently here. And this is, most of the coastline is this very rocky, arid, dry coastline that is with the beautiful blue water. But you get up into the mountains and then you get the typical green valleys, much like you'd find in the Alps in Central Europe, for example. So it's quite a stark contrast. And up here, one of the highlights of this trip and visiting this part of the country, and I suspect that many of you will perhaps venture up here on your own. And Cyprus is quite nice because you can easily rent a car, particularly in March. The traffic is not super heavy. They do drive on the left side of the road, so that's one thing to keep in mind. But you can venture out here, and they have wonderful agro-tourism, so small little family-owned inns and country homesteads where you get to sample some of the food and get a better insight into the way of life. The Kykkos monastery is yet again one of the most important historical places in the country, and it is super ornate. It's most monasteries that I've seen are very sort of minimalist and barren, but this one has got all kinds of gilded artifacts and wonderful decoration on the walls and so on. So it'll certainly be an exciting day, and again, we'll probably do that early in our visit, so that those of you that want to get up into the hills and maybe even do some hiking, that's all available to you up in the Troodos Mountains. Nicosia is another must-do on our stay in Cyprus. We'll probably make a couple of trips into the northern part of Cyprus, and what makes Nicosia particularly special is that it is the only divided capital in the world. So it literally sits on the border, on the UN buffer zone between southern and northern Cyprus. And as a result, you get a bit of an insight into the contrasts between the religions, obviously Greek Orthodox in the southern part of Cyprus, and then Islam in the north, but also how this past turmoil has affected the wealth. I mean, it'll be very clear to you when you cross the green line, the so-called green line that separates the two from southern Nicosia into northern Nicosia, what that has meant. And obviously, I think it goes without saying the northern part is quite a bit poorer than the southern part, but nevertheless, Nicosia is quite an amazing city to visit. That'll be, I think, one of the highlights of our trip. You can't visit an island without going on a cruise, and the Akamas Peninsula, which is not far from Paphos, is perhaps, certainly in the western part of the country, one of the most scenic places to visit. And so we'll get on board a boat like you see in the picture and take in some of this amazing coastline. We'll go to the baths of Aphrodite. Of course, in Greek mythology, Aphrodite was rumored to have her gardens here in Cyprus. There's some amazing sea caves. And we'll even have the opportunity for those of you who are brave enough to get into the water that is a bit chilly at this time of the year, and even do some snorkeling. But as I said, it is a little cool still in March, but we'll have the opportunity to do all those things on a bit of a boat ride. And we may even have a second cruise available. Again, there's lots more that we'll probably offer that I'm not going to talk about today, just in the interest of time. But there's no shortage of fun things to do. Another trip that we'll take, that will venture into the northern part of Cyprus, is to FAMAGUSTA, which is way over on the east coast of the country. And this is actually quite a famous walled city. And tourists used to flock here in particular because it has one of the nicest beaches on the island. But of course, it was also one of the places that was most noticeably affected by the Turkish invasion back in 1974. And as a result, they basically strung up barbed wire around a whole section of the city, in particular this beach area. And so it's become essentially like a ghost town, a relatively modern day ghost town, because you'll see, hotels and apartment buildings and whole complexes, all of which have been abandoned for the better part of 40 years. And so beyond that, it is all of these architectural treasures, which are a little bit unique to some of the old ones that you'll find at Kourion or Kykkos. And so people come here particularly to see those. And you see this wonderful church here that has been sort of, half destroyed with a mosque in front of it. So again, you get a great sense of the juxtaposition between north and south here in FAMAGUSTA, not to mention that, as I say, that whole eastern coastline is a little bit different. We will do one of a couple of different culinary tours and courses. We'll definitely have a cooking class, so you get a chance to prepare your own Cypriot food. And one of the focuses here will be on this tradition, this local Cypriot tradition of meze. And you've probably heard of meze before. It's basically sharing of small dishes, much like tapas is in Spain, for example. And you get in a typical meze in Cyprus up to 20 little dishes, things like halloumi that you might have tried before. That's that brined cheese that is served grilled. It's one of my absolute favorites. Or moussaka, eggplant, tomato, and minced meat in this lovely bechamel sauce. Oh, it makes me hungry just thinking about it. And not to mention lots of seafood. For those of you that enjoy seafood, obviously being an island, they really specialize in dishes like octopus. Is something you'll see a lot of. So we'll get a bit of a deeper understanding into Cypriot cuisine and also enjoying some of its wine. And so I'll talk about the wine in a minute. One of the other hands-on things that we like to do is get our hands a little bit dirty and try things like a pottery class. So we have this gentleman called Agostino who's been making crafts, making pots and so on for over 30 years in the traditional Cypriot style. And so this is one of those activities that we can go and do and actually get your hands dirty and maybe make a pot, or, as I always used to do as a kid, make an ashtray. So you can never have too many ashtrays, right? I'm joking, of course, but a pottery class is one of those neat things that's just kind of fun to do. And that's right in Paphos. I mentioned a little bit about wine. And so Cyprus is definitely a wine destination for those of you who like to try different wines. Most of the ones that you'll find here, much like in Greece, are names that you will have never heard of. I mean, how many have you tried actually a Cyprus wine before? To be honest, I don't know any that you can get in the LCBO in Ontario or in the liquor store in BC. We just don't see them that much because in relative terms, the production is very small. The wine region here starts higher up in the mountains where all the quality wines are produced, and they follow a designation system like DOC, like Appellation Contrôlée in France, or the Italian version of that. And as I say, because of the hot climate in the summertime, most of the vines are in the foothills of the Troodos Mountains. So we'll take a whole trip through this Panagias wine region, which is up in this area, and it'll take us once again through all these green valleys up in the mountains. And some of the wines that you'll taste, for example, the most famous and most produced white wine in Cyprus is called Xynisteri. So I don't know about you, but I've never had Xynisteri wine before. But once we get there, we'll get a chance to try it, and many of the other ones that are on offer. For golfers, this is a place to come. So I know that many of our members like to play the occasional round of golf, and I'm pleased that the area around Paphos has at least a half a dozen wonderful golf courses. Like what you see in the picture, you've got, and I always like a golf course that's in stark landscape such as this, because you get these beautiful greens and so on amongst the dry, arid countryside. So there's a number of different golf courses there. We're going to be probably arranging a special package for a couple of them, with a green fee and rentals of club. But there's enough golf courses here, contrary to sort of some of our other programs like Samui and Madeira, where there's relatively limited golf available. Here, there's quite a bit. So you could quite easily turn this into a little golf holiday if you were interested. And the golf courses there, depending on where you're at, sort of they have green fees that range, anywhere from about, so call it 70, 80 Canadian dollars up to 150 and so on. So consistent with what we'd find at home. I wouldn't say it's cheap golf like you'll find in parts of the US, but relative to what you'll find in other parts of Europe, I think it's quite reasonable. So golf is definitely one of the things that's on our agenda for this trip. As I mentioned before, Cyprus's position in the eastern part of the Mediterranean means that there's lots of places that we can escape to for a couple of days. So if you find that being 30 days, being a whole month in one place is maybe a bit much and you want to see a bit more of the region, then it's a great spot to go and hit some of these destinations that are basically an hour or so flight away. And all of these cities, I can honestly say, I think are worth a visit if you haven't been. Tel Aviv, for example, which is, of course, the major city in Israel on the coast. We were there just over a year ago with some of our Wheel and Anchor members on our trip through the Middle East. A very vibrant city. And of course, it is new in the sense that it became it got very busy after the Second World War, when Israel, of course, got populated, and Tel Aviv sprung up with all kinds of modern office buildings, and at the same time retaining some of the historical places like the old port of Jaffa that you can see in the pictures here. So Tel Aviv has a beautiful, huge, long boardwalk along the beach, some amazing markets as well. And you can easily as well, they actually have a brand new train going between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So you can hop over for 3 nights and get a nice taste of Israel for those of you that are interested to visit and perhaps haven't been, or maybe you've been before and you want to come back, because as I say, it's just a short hop away. Another city to visit, which frankly is one of my favorite in all of the Middle East, is Beirut, which is of course the capital of Lebanon, and also a short hop from Cyprus. And I've been fortunate to visit Beirut at least 3 times in the last 10 years or so. And, Lebanon has had its challenges, and, many of us are aware of some of the difficulties they've gone through, in the very recent past. But the city itself has a character and a charm to it. Of course, Lebanon was a French colony for a long time, so you see the French influences, and you also see these dichotomies between Muslim religion and the various Christian religions there. The Maronites are there. There's so many different things happening in Beirut and Lebanon that it's to be able to drop in and spend a few days and explore this fascinating city with such tenacious people like you'll hardly find anywhere. And as I say, it's I won't go into the details, but many of you will know some of the challenge that they face, and the resilience of the Lebanese people is very much evidenced in Beirut. And I for one, can't wait to go back. Another spot on our weekend getaway list that we can hit, which is a little further, about an hour and a half flight from Larnaca, from the main airport in Cyprus, is CAIRO, another city that we visited in our Middle East program last year. And so, you know, it's funny, you're in the middle of Europe, in Cyprus, of course. Southern Cyprus is part of the EU, and yet in no time, in what it takes to fly from Toronto to Montreal or from Vancouver to Calgary, you can be here in one of the greatest cities in civilization. And CAIRO is truly amazing, not just for the Great Pyramids. Of course, later this year, they're going to be finally opening the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is going to be one of the largest museums in the world. And honestly, it's worth a trip to CAIRO. Even if you went there once before, you will not have had a chance to see this museum because it's just opening up. But to spend a couple of days in CAIRO and take in this frenetic atmosphere, and not to mention the wonderful hospitality of the Egyptian people, it's a nice thing to do. So we will keep you busy with all of these different options that we are suggesting while we stay in Cyprus. Let me tell you a little bit about our accommodations, and I was very delighted that we found a great spot for us to stay. There is this wonderful whole village resort complex just to the east of the old town of Paphos, and it's called the Aliathon village. And what's nice about this is that because it's a whole village complex, there are a few different restaurants. They may not all be open in the wintertime, but at least a couple of them will. But they have swimming pools. They have a wide range of accommodation. They've got shops and bars and restaurants and indoor swimming pool, outdoor swimming. They've got all the facilities to make for a comfortable stay. And so this is really a good 4-star property. You get a sense here from some of the photos of the decor, of the look and feel of the place. It's very, very comfortable. And as I say, because this is the low season, not the entire complex is not all open, but certainly enough that we get a solid feel for it. Now, Cyprus is a destination for snowbirds coming from other parts of Europe, particularly from the UK, from Germany, and to some extent as well from France. People fly over and spend all or part of the winter. And so that's why, a hotel of this size is available to us. Much like with our other programs, we have a variety of accommodation that's available. So we have studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. All of them come with a kitchenette, and the larger suites, of course, the 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms have a nice living area, and outdoor space as well. For the suites that are on the lower level, there's like a little terrace or a small balcony. So very, very comfortable accommodation, and just a couple of 100 meters away from La Playa, which is the closest beach area, and in a part of town where there are numerous other restaurants and bars and shops and cafes, all within walking distance. So so there's no need to get bored whatsoever. There's lots to do right in and around the Aliathon Resort. So lots more details about that in the brochure. And on that note, there is a lot of other information to provide. We talk about in the brochure some details about what to pack, what to bring along, some of the other requirements to get there and the things that we'll do. We also have a detailed excursion list, which we'll be updating and changing as we go, because I'm always talking to my colleagues over in Cyprus about new and different things to do. So it's sort of a living document, because we want to make sure that you're going to have enough to do when you come and visit with us. Let me talk briefly about our pricing inclusions on this program. I'm delighted that we've been able to come up with this for what I think is a very reasonable price point. Here you can see our double and single occupancy prices for studios and 1-bedroom suites. We have at this point a relatively limited number of 2-bedroom suites. And so as we've noted with our other programs, the 2-bedroom suites are suitable for either 2 couples because they each have their own ensuite bathrooms, or if you're 2 solo travelers traveling together, it's maybe a little bit more of a cost-effective way of going because you can then each share your own bedroom with a private bathroom. We don't have a ton of those, but at the same time, if enough of us come along, then I think that we may be able to get them to open another building in the complex. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm sure that we'll have enough space to accommodate everybody. As usual with our inclusions, I won't go through all the details. The most important thing to note is that included in the price is this activity credit that's $1,000 and plus a little extra for those who book before our early booking bonus date. And so the question always comes up, well, how much does that cover? It covers somewhere around 2/3 of all of the possible programs that we offer at this point. Now, we may add more programs, but we'll probably have more than anybody would probably want to do on a holiday and still have time to do some things on one's own. So it means that we sort of selected an amount that'll give you enough to do for the average person. And I know a few of you are very, very avid and you want to get out there and do a whole bunch more. So obviously you can book as many as you want. And then the difference we just, we tack on top. Breakfast is of course included. We put in a phone and data SIM card for you, which I think is very important because it allows us all to stay in touch and, say, hey, who's going for Italian tonight, or who's going out to here for night, or who wants to go and play a round of golf. So I'm very big on fostering a communication such that we can all enjoy activities together and meet our friends and do things that we like to do. So that's all about the inclusions. Of course, what's not included is our airfare insurance as per usual. We, of course, will give you advice and quotations on both of those things. Airfare in particular, as I've said before, airfare is still one of those question marks. Historically speaking, you should be able to get out to Cyprus for around $900 to $1,000 if you're in Toronto, a bit more in Vancouver. I was just recently looking at the schedules, the air schedules to get to Cyprus, and at the moment, for those coming from the West Coast, there might be a layover that you have to do in one of the European gateway cities like London. So, but of course, with all of the uncertainty in the airline industry in terms of routes and aircraft capacity and all those different things, we have to wait and see a little bit, but we have time. We're not going till next March, so it's more than a year away. So by the time we get past the deposit date and into the summer, and hopefully that vaccination program gets going in Canada, we'll have a better sense on the best way to get there, and we'll make sure that we can help you out with that. So as I mentioned, and as with the other couple of live-away programs, I'm really thrilled to be able to offer a bit of a bonus if you book early, which is first of all, that there'll be no deposit required until June the 1st. And I want to qualify that as well by saying that it really is dependent on where we sit with this whole pandemic, because neither you want to be sort of committed or obligated, nor do we want to commit or obligate you until we have a better understanding about how things are going to look. So there is a chance that date may even get pushed back. If I don't feel the certainty that we're actually going to be able to go, then it's obviously a little bit of a negotiation between us and the hotel and so on. But my commitment, my desire is that we get to a point where everybody's comfortable to say, yes, we're going to go. As far as Cyprus is concerned, they have been dealing with COVID as they have in other places. But I'm pretty confident that they're well underway, probably ahead of us in terms of getting it under control. And by next March, we'll have a a green light to be able to go. So as I say, you get that $200 in additional activity credit as well by getting your name on the list before April the 30th. So of course, if you have questions at all, and we're going to get to our Q&A session, and I see a bunch of questions have come in, and I'll try to address a bunch of them, then please do shoot us an email, pick up the phone, give Paula or myself a call. I'm trickier to reach because, of course, I'm 12 hours ahead of you all. But at the same time, I have talked to numerous members in the last couple of weeks. So I'm always delighted to talk to any of you if you do have questions that you don't get answered today or something that's specific. Please drop us an email or give us a call. And so, yeah, let's have a little bit of Q&A. After I answer some of your questions, I'll tell you about some of our thoughts about future liveaways and our upcoming webinars. So I'm going to go to the question list now, and bear with me for a second because I see there's a whole bunch of questions. So one of our members, Judy, asked about if I wanted, I'm already going to Madeira with you guys, and I want to continue on to Cyprus. And I've actually heard this from a number of people. By all means, you're just basically I'll take you under my arm because needless to say, I'm going to be doing the same. I'm going to be hosting both trips. So from Madeira to Cyprus, it's quite doable. We'll probably fly either via Lisbon or possibly via London, but we will facilitate an extra overnight in either Madeira or in Cyprus, depending on what makes most sense. There are no direct flights between the two, but there are connecting flights, and we're happy to set that up for you, so don't worry about that. Wally asked about Templar history. Wally, I have to confess, I am not 100% sure about Templar history, but Paula has made a note of that, and we will certainly find out about what's available there and get back to you on it. In terms of brochures, Sandy, the brochure was mailed out, or the link was in our last newsletter, as it will be in our upcoming newsletter, and otherwise we'll put the link on here, and you just send us an email and we'll send it out to you. It's a digital brochure as usual, and Paula will make sure that one gets in your hands. The guide for Cyprus, well, we have a couple of different local guides who we use in terms of the host. Well, that's me. So I'll be hosting all 3 of our liveaways next year. So I get to live away for 3 whole months. And I'm very excited about that because I will have been in all of the places beforehand. I'm planning, as I say, to head out to Madeira and Cyprus the moment that borders open and that we can get traveling. And I'll be meeting with all of our local guides and making sure that we have a value-packed program for you. Terry asked about the activity credit against Tel Aviv or Gulf. Yes, you can apply any program that we offer, any of the excursions, activities, anything that's listed or unlisted, you can apply it against anything. And here's the other thing about the activity credit. If for some reason, if you decide you're going to go to Cyprus and you really just want to relax by the pool or on the beach for a week, and you decide not to do anything, I will give you what's left in your activity credit back. So the whole point is it's essentially your money that we're going to help you deploy in the way that makes the best trip for you. That's how it's going to work. So that's, I think, a big bonus because, again, I was really keen on making this flexible. When would your 2021 trips be finalized? Well, Jean, we're for 2021, all of the trips that we are planning to offer we have offered. If you mean 2022, we are working feverishly. As you can imagine, we have a bit of a skeleton team since this whole pandemic. And so we are working very, very hard. We will be releasing at least 1 trip a week over the next several weeks. And if there is anything that you've heard about or are wondering about that I've mentioned in one of our past webinars or anywhere along the way, drop me a note. I'll be happy to let you know. I'll be happy to let you know what is coming up because I know there's a lot of interest, for that. Alina asked a question about the double occupancy price. Yes, that's correct. So the double occupancy price is always based on 2 people per bedroom. So if it's a 2-bedroom, it means 2 people in each of the bedrooms. So that would be 4 people in one 2-bedroom suite. Or so it's always per person based on 2 people sharing a bedroom, and single occupancy, of course, 1 person per bedroom. Kim asked the question about the hotel. It's the Eliathon Hotel, and Kim will shoot you over the brochure so you get a chance to look at that. And also Paula will be happy to send you the link so you can look at the hotel for yourself and look at even more pictures than what we have in our brochure. So there's no secrets there. We'll give you whatever information that you need. And of course, you'll get a replay of this webinar, as we always do, sent to you by email. So if you missed any part of it, if you joined late, then you'll get a replay of it. It'll also be posted on our website, because we know that lots of people can't necessarily join us live, and we want to make sure that you have a chance to see this. Fran asked about Australia for 2022. We are still considering Australia in the latter part of 2022, and there's lots more to say about that, just because of, again, the evolution of the pandemic and how different countries are handling it. And so as soon as we know about that, Fran, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Just briefly, what's next? And I have a poll question to ask, if you'll bear with me for a couple of more minutes. We are going to be offering, because of the strong interest in this LIVEAWAY program, we thought, seems like it's an idea that a lot of people are interested in. So we had some internal discussions amongst our team, and I have been doing some research and talking to colleagues in different parts of the world. So we have a couple of different programs that we are thinking about, and Joel will pop that poll up onto the screen. Let us know, what of these 4 destinations would you be interested in learning about? So in a couple of weeks' time, at the end of March, we're going to be having a LIVEAWAYS future travel forum. I'm going to be talking about some of these destinations. But the 4 that we're thinking about are Italy, specifically Tuscany, and spending a month either in the countryside in Tuscany, in one of these wonderful little villages in the hills, or in Florence, in accommodation similar to what we have here, like a apartment hotel or condo type complex in Florence. So that's one LIVEAWAY we're considering. Here's an outlier for you, which is Colombia, which is a country that a lot of you will know, and has had a checkered past, but has completely transformed in the last 10 years. And it has a brilliant climate, wonderful culture, amazing people. I love Colombia. We're thinking about doing a LIVEAWAY program there, spending a month in either Bogota or Medellin, 2 of the larger cities in Colombia. And so if it's the type of thing you think, yeah, I might be interested to go there, then check that box. Of course, Bali, Indonesia is a logical program to offer in Southeast Asia. And we've had a tremendous response for Koh Samui. And I think Bali would also be a wonderful place to spend a month in the wintertime. And finally, Malta, which is, of course, an island nation between Italy and Tunisia in the central Mediterranean. And so we think it's another great destination. So if you'd be interested in learning about any of those, check the box about the ones that would most appeal to you. You can check all of them if you like, if you really think you'd be interested in all of them, or one of them, or none of them. And that gives us a little bit of a sense of what we put our focus on, because as I always say, we are member driven, and we want to go to the kind of places that you go to. So if you haven't already, then check that box, and we'll tally up the results, and I'll let you know in this upcoming newsletter what everybody said about what the kind of LIVEAWAYs that you'd like to go on, and that will inform, as I say, our program development for the upcoming years. So we're going to close that poll off now, and just before we sign off, our next webinar will be happening 2 weeks from today on March the 11th. We're going to be talking about Croatia, Slovenia, and the Adriatic coast. We're already going there, hopefully, this coming October. We have a group that's almost sold out, but we'll be going back in May of 2022. So May of next year, we'll be heading back to Croatia. And for this wonderful yacht cruise along the coast. I'll be telling you all about that on March the 11th. And then, as I was just describing, we'll have our Live Away What's Next program. And I'm going to explore in a little bit greater detail some of the Live Away programs that we're thinking about offering in 2023 and beyond. And somebody asked a question about New Zealand. Yes, we will go to New Zealand. We had thought about going next year, but New Zealand, as you know, has one of the strictest COVID policies. And at this point, they're not planning to open their borders anytime soon. And so New Zealand will happen, but before we plan it, I hate to plan trips and then have to cancel them because of some extenuating circumstances. So we'll get to New Zealand, I promise you. So that's what's coming up. Finally, one more time, if you have any other questions, please do drop us a note, give me a call. I'm so thrilled with all of the response. Thank you for joining us this morning on our Cyprus Live Away program. I hope it gave you a little bit more insight into this trip. I'm excited to go and I'd be excited to have you come along with me. So thank you again. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I promise we'll be traveling again very, very soon.